Tilehurst End podcast
by Reading fans for Reading fans.
Hello, my name is Olly Allen, assistant editor at the Tilehurst End and podcast extra host. Welcome to this one-off podcast on all things to do with the recent initiative to boost the atmosphere at the Madejski, which has seen a small group of fans move to the South Stand for the recent home games against Preston and Sunderland. The Tilehurst End have been huge supporters of the initiative. Indeed, a few of us have also been part of the group. In the South Stand, we've had a piece go up on the site about it, and there's also been a few in-depth discussions on recent podcasts. Now, though, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by one of the key figures in the group for a special Q&A, and that's Sam Stevenson. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks, yourself?
Yeah, not too. I'm looking forward to finding out some more information about what seems to be quite a very good initiative so far.
Yeah, no, it's really good to be able to come on and try and talk, open and honestly about this. I know there are a lot of questions.
We've asked fans for their questions on Twitter, and we'll get onto that in just a minute. But I'll start by asking sort of when and how did this sort of thing start, and how much work has sort of gone on behind the scenes, sort of to put what's happened so far into place.
So it started, I'd say, probably about 5 months ago. We've actually been discussing with the club for a long time various initiatives to try and improve the stadium match day experience, and one of the results of that has actually been the fan zone outside the East Stand. But there were a group of fans who we kept going back to this atmosphere every time we met with the club, every time we met as fans. And we just thought, what can we do? So we started to think about, as a group, what is it that not just Reading fans but British fans do in general that maybe European fans don't do? They've obviously got a reputation for being loud and having decent atmospheres. And one of the things that we looked at was, after a recent trip to Germany, my brother came back and we were talking about how they'd gone to see Hamburg play. Hamburg are not playing well. They're right down the bottom of the league, but they were chanting positively all game. It didn't matter that the team were losing. The match was, by all accounts, awful. But that positive chanting really generated a great atmosphere, even though the game was terrible. So we thought, right, we want to bring that here. And if we do that, we have to put some rules in place for ourselves, which is, obviously we're not going to chant at the away fans if we can help it, and we're going to try and keep it positive. So we thought, okay, great. Can we do this ourselves? Probably not, because it means displacing other fans. So we went to the club and said, what can we do? Is there anywhere we can go? They said, the South Stand for the Preston game would be clear. So we kind of penciled that in and spent a few weeks deciding how we were going to get names and whatnot. And what it meant was that first week, it probably looked a little bit off the radar. And a lot of fans were obviously surprised by it, which is great because it generated a bit of conversation. And then following that, we went back to the club and said, look, could we continue to do this for the rest of the season? And they said, yeah, none of the away teams coming to Madejski had sold their allocation that would take them into that half of the stand. So they've said to us, yes, you can have that for the last 2 games of the season, which was obviously Sunderland and then the Ipswich game coming up. And we've just tried to increase numbers game on game. But that's pretty much it, to be honest, in terms of getting it all together. And then obviously we've had the admin in the background, creating a Twitter account, trying to collate names, all of that stuff. But as far as actual ideas go and what we're going to do in the future and that kind of stuff, we haven't really got there yet. But as far as in terms of actually getting it up and running, we are where we are. And it was a bit of an experiment, and it seems to have, I guess, worked so far.
I think it's definitely worked. I think you can certainly see all the hard work that's sort of gone in so far. I think one of the best things about this is that it is completely fan led. Obviously, the club are facilitating it, but they didn't handpick fans, and this is a group of fans who went to the club with an idea and are now running with it, which is great, I think. Yeah, and I can't stress enough how supportive the club have been, and that doesn't mean that they've been. I've seen, people worrying that we see ourselves potentially as better than other fans, or that's not the case at all. But in terms of allowing us to go where we are, give us a concourse so we can actually say to people, look, come and sit with us. You can still get a drink at half time and a pie, that kind of thing. They've been great. They've really facilitated everything that we've asked for so far. As you mentioned, there will be some fans who are sceptical. I think most likely sort of those in sort of Y25, Y26 who sort of feel left out or annoyed for whatever reason, as that area perhaps has traditionally been the loudest part of the ground, but there's certainly no exclusion involved in here at all.
No, so I guess in regards to Y25-26, I've sat down there for a few years. I used to sit in Y19 actually, and I moved up to Y25-26 for atmosphere. One of the things that I noticed over the last few years was obviously it does get loud, and there's some great banter between the away fans and the home fans that sit at that end. But it can be quite reactive. And I think generally it's been quite hard to get any kind of cohesion in terms of chants going, especially when the attendance hasn't been as high as it has been in recent years. So you've got big gaps. So for us, it was really important to move. But that doesn't mean that we, just because we've said we want to sing positively about our team, that was just a rule we put in place for ourselves. It doesn't mean that we want anyone to stop what they're currently doing, and it definitely doesn't mean that we want Y25-26 to feel like we're going up against them. That's not the case. The ideal scenario is that everybody in the ground hears us chant and gets involved, and we were doing the same at the Sunderland game the other week. We'd hear the drummer going and we get involved with the chants that the rest of the ground were singing. So we're not trying to take ourselves away from the rest of the fans that come to Reading games. Ideally, we want to bring everyone together.
I think along those lines, Matthew Everton asks, why is there a need to bash other fans about not being good, positive or loud enough? And apparently it can infuriate other supporters when all they want to do is just support the team. It's not a case of who's better group of fans. I think you've certainly covered that there, but this does seem to have perhaps stemmed from the fact that Liam Moore paid for a coach to take the group up to Sheffield Wednesday last weekend, but certainly again there's no divide intentionally being created then. It was just a nice gesture from Moore.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was great. He contacted one of the guys in the stand and said, look, it would be great if you guys came up and got behind us, an away game and offered to pay for the coach. And look, I completely understand that some people might see that as a perk and as something that you might get if you thought of yourself as a fan that was better than other people. That's not the case at all. Again, we tried to fill it with the fans from the South Stand, and when we couldn't get enough, we put messages out on Twitter asking if anybody else was interested. Yeah. We were happy for anybody to be involved, and anybody that had been part of the South Stand project too. And as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen anybody from the South Stand claiming to be better than anyone else either. I think if there's an air of that, it's probably whereby there has been some negativity. I think maybe people have heard things on the grapevine and think that things are going on that actually aren't. As I said, as a group, our core goal has been to be positive and involve as many people as possible going forward. And I haven't seen anything from the group specifically suggesting that they think they're, in any way a better fan than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately everyone around the ground, just basically wants a better atmosphere at the Madejski Stadium, sure. and that will certainly only come if everyone's on the same page, wouldn't it? Rather than sort of everyone fighting against one another. Yeah,
and I think, admittedly, part of it has probably come about as well because we are in the South Stand and it looks like we've separated ourselves off. But as I said earlier, that's purely logistical at the moment. We're only there because we don't want to displace other fans, which again would have caused uproar for another reason, and so we decided that we would try and take ourselves away from that. But as we go forward, we'll see what happens. It might be that we can move closer to home fans. Don't know, but I think that might have caused potentially some of this rift as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few questions on sort of where this group would sort of perhaps be situated going forward, or whether there would sort of be different groups dotted around a stadium. Tom Harris-Smith, for example, says, as the group appears to be currently isolated, being next to the West Stand and the away fans, the noise often gets lost from where he sits in the East Stand. Do you think it would be better suited to one of the north corners from where there's far more potential for it to boost what is really the home end, he says, which has been horribly sparsely populated in recent seasons? And certainly, as you mentioned, the South Stand's not necessarily the permanent home for the group, is it?
No, it's not. And in the long run, it might be that we move somewhere else. And one of the things you've got to bear in mind is that if we move anywhere as a group, it would mean probably displacing some people who have season tickets and may have sat in their seat for years and years, 20 years, and it doesn't matter if Y19 is sparsely populated. There would be a logistical challenge moving this whole group over there. But it's not at the moment, we haven't discussed next season. We want to carry it on, and that's something the club want to do as well. The backing is there to do that, but we haven't discussed where we're going to sit yet. And obviously a lot of fans have mentioned that, if an away team does bring, the full capacity and takes that whole end, where would we go? And again, we don't have the answer yet. At the moment, we've just gone with what we've got, which is the away teams aren't bringing that many fans down, so we've got the space. But going forward, as I said, it's about cohesion. So if it means moving somewhere where we can actually get the whole stadium involved and people can hear us, great. That's something we'll definitely be talking to the club about and seeing what we can do in regards to that.
There's also been a suggestion, obviously, if the drummer becomes a permanent fixture once again in the northeast corner, and we saw him return for the Sunderland game, I think it was. Sort of, what is the likelihood of something like that being added to help the atmosphere, like the drum? Or we've all seen a megaphone, of course, at the two games so far. But I know it's got quite a lot. There's got quite a lot of people talking. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in terms of the drum, obviously we didn't have the drummer for the first game. We had him for the second game, and in my opinion, it was good. I know there was a lot of division when he was here last time, but actually having the drummer come back, at least if, with a bit of persistence, he could get people involved up and down the East Stand. And obviously, as I said, we joined in too. We'd be happy to, talk to the drummer and see if we could, come together in some way and try and generate an atmosphere from that corner maybe. But yeah, I mean, as of yet, we haven't discussed anything with the drummer or the club in regards to bringing that together. But you did mention the megaphone. I want to quickly touch on that. So I know it's something new, right? Like the megaphone is something that people don't really do in this country. It is something that a lot of clubs do in Europe. I mean, I remember going to see Real Madrid play 2004, 2003, something like that, and they had a megaphone back then. They've been doing this for 15 or 20 years.
I think they have it in the yellow.
They
wall,
do, yeah. So Dortmund use it as well, and various clubs across Europe do this. Now I know American clubs do it too, and I know a lot of people see it as cringeworthy, and I understand why. But for us, really, at the moment, again, it comes down to the numbers, and because we haven't got that many people, trying to get chants started was always going to be a bit more of a challenge. So we thought that we would bring it in initially. We'd see how it goes. As I said, at the moment, it's kind of a testing phase, really. We're just trying to see what works and what doesn't. We have actually tried, and this is something a lot of fans probably wouldn't have picked up on, but we've tried for sustained periods of both the games we've used it to put the megaphone down and see what happens. And at the moment, it has been harder to generate an atmosphere without it. I think we're probably going to use it for the Ipswich game, and then again, as with everything else, it'll be a discussion over the summer to see whether we want to carry on with that or not. But at the moment, it's working for us, and it could be worse.
I mean, I think certainly the only reason why sort of it looks a bit odd is that, as you mentioned, it's not commonplace in this country. I think, as you mentioned, it's more associated with sort of the likes of Europe and in America. But if it helps drive the atmosphere, I can only see that helping. Moving on then, there's been a few questions on the fact, obviously in the South Stand, it's generally been standing for the whole game so far, and Alex Everson has asked whether the intention is sort of to stay standing going forward, and if the club has plans to sort of loosen that regulation around the ground.
So as to regulation, I can't really talk. That's a club policy. But in terms of what we're doing, we talked about, I guess another element that I haven't really mentioned yet is a lot of the fans that are sitting in the South Stand go to away games. So we talked about trying to get the core together and trying to, stand up and be as loud as possible. And as of yet, nobody's asked us to sit down, and we haven't asked if we can stand up. We've just kind of done it. So I can't talk to club policy, but I can say that, we're enjoying the fact that we can stand. But, I can't talk to what the club have got in plan for the rest in line for the rest of the stadium. But obviously, regulation in this country doesn't necessarily allow for it. It
was going to lead me on to my next question, actually, which is sort of the one of the aims, ultimately, one of this sort of to provide a strong argument for the introduction of safe standing, perhaps in this country.
Sure. I mean, we all know that when we go to away games, it's kind of accepted. And one thing I would say is that we also all know that standing in a seated stadium is probably more dangerous than standing would be in a stadium with safe standing. So the fact that look, you go to any ground up and down the country and look at the away fans, and the vast majority of them will be standing up, and you can make the argument that that is dangerous. Granted, at Reading, we probably don't see that many instances, directly related to that. But safe standing is something that we're fully behind. As fans, we like the idea that we can stand up, especially behind the goal. We've obviously tweeted out that we're backing the petition that's been going around recently, and the club have said in the past that they are behind safe standing too. So, hopefully in the future that's something that everyone will be able to do, and there'll be areas you can go to if you want to do that. But it's something that at the moment, for us, I guess we see it as the entry to that. But realistically, it all depends on a law change, which at the moment isn't going to happen, and the club can't really influence that much.
I mean, it's sort of out of their hands at the moment. Sure. I'd say probably at the moment. Looking to the future, then one Steve Coppell, great name on Twitter, asks what are the plans for next season? Obviously we've talked about potentially relocating, but sort of what else is in the pipeline? I know Will Jones, my fellow assistant editor at the Tilehurst Den, has sort of suggested bringing back things like Beach Day and Beard Day that were created to try and improve the atmosphere sort of the 1990,000 season. But any ideas or how this might move forward next season?
So we talked about various things. I mean, one of the things we'd really like to do, I think, and we don't know how we would do it yet, would be to decorate whatever area we're in with as many flags and Reading-based, memorabilia and whatever as possible. I mean, I'll be honest, one of the things I'd say about Madejski personally, and I am actually down there at the moment looking out at the stadium, is that other than, unless you knew Madejski Stadium was the home of Reading, there's not a lot in the stadium to say this is Reading FC's ground. And I've actually been saying that for a few years. And I think it would be really nice. You go to the Emirates, you go to Spurs, you look at what they've got. They've got their own club stuff hanging from, all the tiers and whatnot. We could actually cover the stand in various Reading things. That would be great. We want to increase the numbers. We want to let people, anybody that wants to come along and be part of it, we want to allow them to do that. And we've talked about potentially taking this away, but that's kind of, to away games, but that's really in the very early stage of talks. We don't know how we do that yet. But as for plans, it's mainly to make sure this carries on. So we don't want to lose the buzz over the summer. We want to make sure that we go into next season, everybody's clear on what it is we want to do. Everybody knows how they get tickets for it, and hopefully we'll have something in place with the club that allows people to just phone the ticket office and buy a ticket rather than having to come through us. And I mean, that's kind of it. It's very loose at the moment, and that's one of the things that I guess I want to very quickly touch on, if you don't mind. A lot of people are talking about, what happens if this happens? What happens if the away team bring more fans? What happens if the club enforce seating? We don't have any answers to any of that. I mean, above all else, we started this to have a good time and to generate an atmosphere. That was it. It wasn't to start a movement or take this away or do anything. It was just to generate an atmosphere and enjoy games a little bit more, especially when we're not playing well. If we can sing and have a laugh and have a few beers with our friends and go away from the game feeling like we've had a good time, even if we lose, that's what we want. There's no hidden agendas. There's nothing else. That is it. So we are kind of growing it and will continue to over the summer. We will probably find ways to take on board anything that fans want to see and suggestions as to where we should be. We will put proposals forward to the club, and then hopefully over the summer we'll be able to announce what's going to be happening, where we're going to be sitting, how it's going to work, and how people can get involved if they want to next season. But for now, we're going to concentrate on the Ipswich game. We're going to be as loud as we possibly can. We're going to hopefully end the season at home at least with a bit of a bang, get the win we need, get behind the team, and the players and the club seem to really enjoy the fact that we're there too. So that can only be good for team morale. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. We don't have any answers as to next season, but at the moment, enjoy the last game of the season and see where this goes.
I think certainly having this sort of this trial period of these 3 games will certainly sort of help discussions in the summer.
Yeah.
With the club sort of moving it forward. If people are interested in joining the group, is there still time to do so for the?
Yeah, there is. So I think we're planning on probably handing the list of names into the club tomorrow. So if anyone's interested, contact at Club 1871 on Twitter, and we just need your name and season ticket number or member number, and we'll get you on the list, and then you can obviously come along and join us on Saturday.
Fantastic stuff. As we round off then, any final words from you, Sam, sort of to clear up any other doubts or people might have, or you sort of cover that in that lovely speech we heard a few minutes ago?
No, not really. I just, anybody wants to come and join us, let us know. Anybody has any ideas, let us know. Even if it's someone's worried about a negative effect it might have on the club or on other fans, let us know. But what I'd ask is that if you have any suggestions to help improve that, that's great. It's one thing saying you're potentially, pulling apart the fan base, but if you can say this is how you could maybe improve it, that would also help. And we'll take it all away and come back with something next season and keep this going.
Yep. It's all about communication at the end of the day, I think.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, from my point of view, I think, I'll end by saying, if you don't like the idea of the new singing section, then that's absolutely fine. I mean, no one's forcing you to go there or join the group or even like it. I mean, I'm not even sure if I would go and sit there long term, perhaps myself, but please acknowledge that, this is a superb fan-driven idea to sort of try and improve the atmosphere, something that's far too often criticised by those visiting the Madejski Stadium and indeed our own fans as well. And hopefully this can progress into something special and hopefully make the Madejski Stadium have at least one sort of wall of noise each game. And we've seen the likes of Chris Gunter, Gareth McCleary, Paul McShane and Liam Moore all come out in support of the idea. So the players are clearly backing it. And ultimately, Sam, it is them that the atmosphere affects the most, because if we can try and give them that extra little bit of motivation to perform out on the pitch, then that may well help.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, on the pitch and off the pitch. On the pitch, it's great if the players up their game. We have heard in the past about managers, and actually Clark was one of them. The managers who brought this up, Steve Clark, talked about how certain sets of away fans could almost pull the ball into the goal by creating a wall of noise and really, I guess, unnerving the Reading defence here. So I guess the idea was to try and do the same thing, but then for ourselves as well, we want to enjoy the game too, and we definitely enjoy it if we're singing and we're coming away from it feeling like we've made a difference. So on both sides, it's definitely something that I think can work in the long run.
Fantastic stuff. That then rounds off our South Stand Q&A, and all that's left for me to do is thank Sam for joining me and giving us some great insight into the group and its aims tonight.
No problem. Thank you very much.
No worries at all. There is no main show with Mark this week, but there will be a podcast extra out on Thursday, where I'll be joined by Tilehurst editor Simeon Pickup and the Working in Papers Tom Crocker to look back on a 3-0 defeat to Sheffield Wednesday in some detail before looking ahead to that final home game of the season against Ipswich on Saturday. So look out for that wherever you get your podcasts. But until then, thank you very much for listening to today's show, and come on you ours.
Get social with the boys
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.